the 23rd Psalm, the Lord our Shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd, I have everything I need. He lets me rest in fields of green grass and leads me to quiet pools of fresh water. He gives me new strength. He guides me in the right paths, as he has promised. Even if I go through the deepest darkness, I will not be afraid, Lord, for you are with me. Your shepherd's rod and staff protect me. You prepare a banquet for me where all my enemies can see me. You welcome me as an honoured guest and fill my cup to the brim. I know that your goodness and love will be with me all my life, and your house will be my home as long as I live. May God add his blessing to the reading of his word.
So let's start again. My name's Julia, and your name is? Right, nice to meet you. So this morning we would love to share a message with you. Michael and I are really passionate about mental health, about mental wellness, and about speaking about the topic that affects all of us. Basically, if we're breathing, if we have a brain in our head, then we're all affected by our mental well-being in one way or another. So we'd love to sort of just get into that this morning and share, and really hope to encourage you in dealing with that as we go along. Now, life is very unexpected. Would you agree? Yeah. So the other day, I wrote off my daughter's car. Now, I know normally it happens the other way round, right? So she's nearly 20. I'm wondering, shall I pop up here? Yeah. So she's turned 20. And so I popped into her car, and I was moving her car on the driveway, and I ran it into the back of a parked truck. Now, I don't have any excuse or reason, so I'm just going to leave that information there for you. Anyway, I took the car down to the panel beater, and I said to the panel beater, can I borrow your loan car? And he looked at me, was a bit suspicious after hearing what had happened before. But anyway, he said, sure, no problem. And he gave me the loan car. Now, at this point, he began to give me a bit of really important information, because sometimes in life you need information. He said to me, instead of a handbrake in this car, we have a foot brake. So you're familiar with that? You know, you have a foot brake. So I thought, right, that is important information. I'm going to take that on board. And then he started to do what we ladies like to call mansplaining. Hey girls, you with me? Mansplaining, where they tell you stuff you do not want to know. They're like, blah, 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 and I just switched off. So I sort of was like, yeah. Anyway, we drove along. I came up to the first intersection, which was on a hill. And I came up, and I stopped, and I looked at the girl in the car next to me and smiled at her. And at this point, my conscious brain and my subconscious brain began to have a little conversation. So my conscious brain said, foot brake, foot brake. The man said, foot brake. I thought, oh, yes, I remember. Noted. I put on the foot brake. I was like, yes, I'm nailing this. I'm doing really well. Very happy with myself. But unfortunately, my subconscious brain said to me, normally at this point, your left hand would have something to do. Now, someone in all their wisdom had designed this car so that where the handbrake would normally be was the handle that makes the seat lie down. I know, clearly not designed by a woman. Anyway, so I stop, I look, I smile, I reach down, I lift up the handle, and grrr, I just disappeared. The girl in the car next to me was looking a bit alarmed, because I disappeared. I assumed she thought I'd been raptured or something, because I'm so spiritual. But the problem is now I'm lying down. And of course, the laws of physics state that what lies down must come up. So I thought, how am I going to I'm going to have to come up creatively. So I came up slowly, waving like the Queen, as I approached her. Life is unexpected. I was brought up in a highly conservative church background, and I was brought up in a wonderful family. But I think I learned a sub-message that if you make all the right decisions, you'll end up with all the right results. Now, I believe that partially to be true, because many of the things in our lives that we live with are a result of our choices, right? But the older I get, the more I realize is that life happens to us all. The fact that we are Christians does not insulate us from anything difficult happening. It doesn't make everything sparkly and perfect. And in actual fact, I'm looking desperately for the verse in the Bible that says, "For lo, life will be sweet from now on." And I can't find it. If anyone finds it, please let me know. It's not in your Bible, good. It's probably in Numbers somewhere, eh? Because no one's ever read that, let's be honest. But we look for this feeling that everything's going to go really, really well. And then when life happens to us, it can be really, really confronting. And so I have had this sort of journey of my life going through dealing with some unexpected handbrake type experiences. So I'd like to share some songs this morning. Is that okay? All right. So I'm going to start with a song called "The Beautiful Survivor." And I chose this message after having heart surgery when I was about 34. And I thought, this is going to be my pinnacle. This is the worst thing that's going to happen to me in my life. This will be my wonderful testimony, and everything will be good. So I picked a topic of my life called "The Struggle Makes You Stronger." Now, the problem is when you preach, you have to practice. Right. So I have been tested on "The Struggle Makes You Stronger" over and over again. What a muppet. Instead of picking "Struggle Makes You Stronger," I should have picked "Money Makes You Happy," because that would have been much more fun, wouldn't it? But I picked this message. And so the message of "The Beautiful Survivor" has really sat with me. But the understanding is that the verse in the chorus of the song says, "I'm always on your side, even when you struggle." And sometimes it's in the depths of our struggle and our pain that we feel the presence of God the closest as we come along. Sometimes the night is so deep, you just cannot sleep for all that's surrounding you. Everything said circles your head. You feel like you're drowning. But here in the shadow, you know I won't leave you alone. I said I would never abandon you here on your own. Well, I'm always on your side. Even when you struggle, it makes your wings grow stronger. You're a beautiful survivor. Sometimes the wounds from a friend can hurt till the end, leaving you breathless. Hope that's delayed, or secrets betrayed, you're feeling defenseless. But here in the shadow, you know I won't leave you alone. I said I would never abandon you here on your own. This feels like more than you can bear, but it'll make you braver than you dare. I'm always on your side. Even when you struggle, it makes your wings grow stronger now. You're a beautiful survivor. Well, I turned 40 a number of years ago, and in my 40th year, I had what I call my neck minute year. I don't know if you guys use the terminology neck minute. My life was going really nicely. Neck minute, it just kind of all turned to custard a little bit. My father says that. He's English. Who's English? Are you British people here? You'll understand my father. He's a very cheeky man, my dad. I love him very much, but he's cheeky. If I turn up to my dad's house looking less than well groomed, he goes, "Oh, given up the fight, have we?" Tough crowd, my father. He said to me once, I think all fathers wish their daughters would never grow up. And he says, I liked when he had long hair and pigtails. I said, I liked when he had hair. So we're sort of even. We're kind of even there. But yeah, I had a wonderful home. I had a wonderful ministry, 2 beautiful children. I'd been married really happily for 17 years and a fantastic life. And, you know, I would say that God had blessed me in many, many ways. And in my 40th year, my husband of 17 years, who'd been my childhood sweetheart, announced to me in one conversation that he no longer wanted to be married to me. And I found myself, instead of facing a future that I could rely on or depend on, I found myself facing unknown, uncertain. In my family, in my faith, in my culture, this was not what I had signed up for. And I went into a period of time where the stresses in my world as a single mum just began to increase a little bit by little bit by little bit. And as I went along, I found I was beginning to deal with pressures that I was somewhat unprepared for. And I was still looking for that verse in the Bible that said everything was going to be sweet. But I couldn't find it. But you know what? I found one that says, I will never leave you and I will never forsake you. God hasn't promised it's going to be perfect, but He has promised He will always be present with us, even in the storm. Now, during that time, I was able to record a beautiful project of mine and my grandma's favourite hymns. I was very close with my grandma. I'm the baby of the family, which makes me think I'm the favourite. It's because I am. Oh, I'm kidding. But you know what it's like in families. There's the oldest child. The parents have lots of good ideas, you know, heaps of money. Then you get to the baby. Can't be bothered, just let them do what they like. Then there's just all the ones in the middle. Is anyone here a middle child? Give them a hug. These people have issues. But they're not going to tell you about it because you're just going to ignore them anyway. Am I right? Yeah, they kind of miss out a little bit there. Anyway, I'm the baby, so Grandma and I were very close. And so I was able to, during that time, when I couldn't really think of words to say, lean in on some of her favourite hymns. So is it all right if I do a hymn this morning? I know we've sung some beautiful ones already, but this was Grandma's absolute favourite, and it's become one of the themes of my life. I love this song because it doesn't say, it is well with my finances, or it is well with my health, or it is well with my relationships. It just says it is well with my soul. Some days we wake up and we can't choose what goes on around us. We can't control other people's decisions. We can't control the weather. But we can decide how we will respond to what's going on the inside of us. So this is Grandma's favourite, and actually mine as well. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrow like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, you have taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul, it is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. When days roll before me like deserts to cross, when there are too many hands I must hold, I turn to the one that I've known all along, it is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. So as I went along and the stress in my world began to change and increase, I began to experience things that I hadn't really anticipated experiencing, and often I'd thought only happened to other people. I began to have anxiety, not just normal anxiousness, the normal worries of everyday life that keep us alive, but actually I began to experience cycles of spirals of anxiety. I began to experience panic attacks, and ultimately clinical depression. And I began to realize that something was going wrong in my brain that was bigger than just a bad day. Was bigger than just something that I could, pray away the cray-cray or have a break and have a Kit-Kat and get over. I was actually dealing with some mental wellness issues. And it's been a deeply humbling experience for me, I'm going to be really honest with you. I like to say my life is like a long series of getting knocked off my high horse and getting back on progressively smaller horses. And right now, I'm saddling up a Chihuahua. Because I used to think that, mental wellness issues happen to maybe the bad people or the dumb people or the sick people or the people who couldn't handle. And I began to realize that, our brain is simply a part of our body. And who knows, our body doesn't always do what we want it to do. Our health is something that changes over the course of our lifetime, and we just have to deal with that stuff too. So I've kind of dealt with these things as I've gone along. And one of the things that I've had to deal with is that when I get stressed, I tend to run away. In every group of people, there will be two types of people. There's the fighters and the flighters. If I put you all under pressure right now, we'd have two lots of people. Some of you would be wanting to take on that problem. If I yelled fire, there's not a fire, by the way, don't panic, but if I yelled fire, a few of you here would be very quick to solve the problem. Right, what needs to be done? Quick, let me at the fire. Where's the fire? The rest of us would be looking for a door marked exit. And I would be the first one running. But don't follow me, because I probably wasn't listening when they said where the exit was, but I can see there's one over there. Because we have this habit of running away. Now, those are both normal, God-given things to help save our lives. They're wonderful. But we do tend to do both. When I'm under stress, I fly. I run away. And it can be really frustrating for other people because they want to be there for me. They want to support me. They want to help me. And I tend to have this habit of just hiding and saying, I'm fine. I'm fine. Because we're Kiwis, right? We're fine. She'll be right. We tend to put on a brave face, especially as Christians, because now we've got to say, oh, well, God's with me too, so I'm going to put on my brave face. Sometimes we say we're right when we're not all right at all. So I've written a song about my feelings towards the fact that why can't I sometimes open my heart to those who God has given me? Sometimes it's easy to lean on God and it's hard to lean on those who God has given us, and it's a bit of a challenge. So this is a song called Why. Why do I try to hide my thoughts from you who knows my mind and understands me on my darkest day? Why do I try to run from you who points me to the sun and shows the stars to light me on my way? Why am I afraid to say the words I need to say? Why is it so difficult to give the game away? You will love, and love is all that I will ever need. I will hide in you, my love, and you will hide in me. Why do I try to hide and hold my feelings deep inside when you have never tried to turn your face? Why am I frightened of the thought that you'd withdraw your love when all around I see unending grace? Why am I afraid to say the words I need to say? Why is it so difficult to give the game away? You will love, and love is all that I will ever need. I will hide in you, my love, and you will hide in me. Slowly falling, I hear you calling. I hear you calling my name. Why am I afraid to say the words I need to say? Why is it so difficult to give the game away? You will love, and love is all that I will ever need. I will hide in you, my love, and you will hide in me. I do have some CDs for sale up the back there. I have my first album was called Julia Grace, just a self-titled one there, and then Beautiful Survivor. That was that collection of songs of real hope and courage during the time of my heart operation when I thought I was having my neck minute year. Neck minute. Things changed again. And then It Is Well, that's that collection of mine and my grandma's favourite. And then finally, my latest album is called Girl on the Kitchen Floor. And, you know, I was involved in the music awards. I actually won a TUI, which is called a New Zealand Music Award, a number of years ago. I've been involved as a judge and a presenter at the music awards. But Helen Clark presented me with my award. She said, "Congratulations," which was exciting and frightening at the same time. So it was a little bit of a personal highlight. So anyway, those are there and available for you. So mental well-being, mental wellness, as I said, has been a journey that I have been on and something that I deal with. Now, you won't hear me talking about fighting depression, battling depression, winning over depression, casting out depression. Mental wellness is something that I will talk about dealing with and managing with and actually living a healthy and whole life through it. Because, you know, mental wellness is an issue that actually affects us all. So what I'd love to do is actually give you some statistics, and they're going to help us understand a little bit more about why we are tackling this topic. The fact of mental wellness. You know, 1 in 2 New Zealanders will meet the criteria for a mental health diagnosis in their lifetime. And that's just one of the plain old facts. However, the problem that we have in the church is that you can actually see there. Do you like that picture of the half the church? I thought that was quite cute. But 49% of churches, so half of our churches in our country, will actually never mention mental health. So we're all dealing with this issue, and yet half the time we're not even going to talk about it at all, or rarely, or never mention it. Interestingly, the next little statistic tells us that 23% of pastors have personally dealt with mental wellness issues. Now, the thing I find interesting about this is it doesn't correlate with the last slide, because what this tells me is that 26% of pastors are lying. Because pastors are just people. We are all the same. Just because you're in ministry doesn't mean that suddenly you are magically, your brain doesn't, it doesn't have problems. And so actually, we are all in this together. So we use a wonderful health model called Te Whare Tapawhā. I don't know if anyone's familiar with this, but this model gives us a key into the school system, into the health system, into the DHB, into the community. And a wonderful thing about it, you'll notice that what it says is that there are many facets to every person. We have a relational side. Taha whānau, we have a family side. We have a physical side. Our body, taha tinana, that's part of our health as well. We have this wonderful side, which is our mental and emotional side, tahine ngaro, which is to do with our brain, and of course taha wairua, our spiritual side. We came up with this model because Mason Jury, who's a researcher, discovered that Māori women were not going to the doctor because they were simply looking at their physical well-being, and they were not asking questions about what went below the surface. And they didn't understand that we need to look inside of ourselves as well. I love this because I can go into school and talk about taha wairua, their spiritual side, and it's perfectly okay. I really enjoy the fact that we can go and do that. So now in church, we're pretty good at building our spiritual wall. We get really strong, and often we get given spiritual answers for things that may have physical addressing issues. Now I've been in church 47 years, and I was brought up saying that I'm not really a person, I'm just a spirit man, which is ironic because I'm not a man, but a spirit person, I'm just a spirit. And people who say they're just a spirit and we're just living in a body, I say, stub your toe and come back to me. You're in a body. I don't know why. If God just wanted us to be a spirit, we'd just be floating around in the atmosphere. But He has given us this body, and we have to live with it. And it's actually important that we look after our body as well. The spiritual side is really important. But sometimes in church, we build that spiritual wall, and we pray for things that we could do ourselves. The room went very quiet just then. But, sometimes we need to be a bit more practical. Oh, Lord, make me fit. Oh, if only there was a way I could get fit. Oh, I'd just speak the spirit of fitness all over me. Cast off the fat. Or I could go for a walk. Sometimes we've got to be more practical. Sometimes I feel like God has given us our brain and He's given us our common sense, and we need to take our spiritual side and combine it, because faith without works is dead. It's of no value. So if we continue to pray for good health while sitting in the KFC line, we're probably not going to get it. So we do need to take care of ourselves and look after ourselves. So our overall view of mental wellness issues has three little parts to it. Mental wellness issues are reasonable. They make a lot of sense. Falling over is a reasonable response of the body. Breaking your leg, that's how the body reacts when we fall down. Morning sickness is a reasonable response of the body to pregnancy. Mental wellness issues are a reasonable response of the body to the stresses and the pressures of life. They make a lot of sense, and that is okay. And the second part is that they are universal. We are all on a wellness spectrum. Who knows, over the course of your life, that your mental wellness will change. Sometimes we hit unexpected road bumps. Sometimes we deal with more stress than others. That's okay. We're all on a spectrum of well-being. Now, some of you might be sitting there thinking, I'm really well. You can always get weller. Because you can tell a weller woman. By the way she wears her hair, thank you. And of course, as we all know, it won't happen overnight. But it will happen. Some of you are going, what just happened? I'm like, don't worry, ask the ladies. They'll understand. We're all on a wellness spectrum. It's okay as we deal with these things. Your brain is simply a part of your body. And actually, sometimes it doesn't always do what we want it to do. That's fine. It's not a problem. And the third part of this, the great news, is that mental wellness issues are manageable. There's so many tools in the toolbox. If you're feeling a little burnt out, that feeling of stress is a little high and you're a bit beige on the inside. If you put a little candle in the middle of the room and said, light the room, it's hard work. Some of you feel like that little candle in your life. You're burning really hard to attempt to do all the things you need to do. And that feeling of burnout is actually very, very real for you today. You know what? There's so many tools in the toolbox. Burnout, depression, anxiety, mental wellness issues, they're not a life sentence. They are simply part of the spectrum of well-being, and there's so much we can do. Now, last night we went through a bunch of things and we talked about a whole lot of tools that we had in the toolbox. I went through these. They all start with the letter F. So we went through faith, which has been a huge part of my journey. I wear an anchor around my neck to remind me that no matter what is going on in my body, I'm connected to the rock who's stronger than me. I love that picture of the ship being connected to the rock. And I know today we've got our wonderful friends, we've got Gail and Joe here, and they've dealt with huge grief and pain in their world, and their faith has been that connector to the rock that is stronger than them. So, for me, my faith, my whānau, the people around me have been really important. Fullness, finding some things that make me come alive. I call these the things that make you go, Things that make you go, Stuff that's fun for you, stuff that you actually enjoy. And these are tools in the toolbox in dealing with our mental wellness. Fitness. Wah-wah. But fitness is so good for your health, so good for your mental well-being. Will keep your brain alive, keep you alert. Food. The link between our food and our mood is undeniable. The way we feed our body changes the way we feel about our life coming out the other side. Pharmaceuticals. I'm really grateful for the medical professionals that have helped me deal with depression. It's okay. I'm fascinated in church how there'll be somebody on heart medication looking down their nose at somebody on brain medication. If you need medical help, we take it, and we're so grateful for it. I'm really grateful for the medical help that has helped me with my mental well-being. If you are feeling depressed, you're feeling burnt out or beige on the inside, go to the doctor. They're not trying to kill you. They're there to help you, and I would encourage you to do that in church especially. It's really, really important. And of course, forward focus. Looking ahead. Not forward focus, although if you drive one of those, great cars, but forward focus. Planning ahead and finding something to look forward to. But today the tool we're going to look at is really, really important, and it's called, it doesn't start with F, but I'll call it thankfulness. Our thankfulness is really, really important. And we have got gratitude as our number one there. We are looking at gratitude here. Now, this is a scripture that I have chosen that talks about gratitude. And I love the fact we actually had the scripture earlier this morning, which was really fantastic. Because, David, he was all over the place, wasn't he? Boy, was he up and down. He had some mental wellness issues. One day he's like, praising the Lord. Next minute he's, I'm down in the valley. And he was all over the shop. So I love the fact that he's very honest. He's a musician, which explains a lot of things, doesn't it? If you live with a creative person, good luck. All right, so it says here, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. I love that. He makes me. He makes me. Sometimes I feel like God's got to take us by the scruff of our neck and say, pause. Hold. You're busy. You're busy. You're busy, busy, busy. Sometimes he has to make us to lie down in a green pasture and say, hey, take some time to replenish. Take some time to renew from the inside. Everybody wants a piece of you, but I want you to be full for yourself. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go and lie down on the lawn. If you want to, no judgment, that's fine. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Yay! Yay. Doesn't feel really yay, does it, when we're going through the valley of the shadow of death? But he says, I will fear no evil, for you're with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So gratitude, he shows this. But I like the fact that he acknowledges his pain. Gratitude is not just pretending. Does anyone remember Pollyanna? We used to have a book called Pollyanna, and she just pretended all the time, everything is fine, everything is fine. But it wasn't really fine. Gratitude is not just pretending that everything is fine. Gratitude is acknowledging the pain, but acknowledging God's goodness in amongst the pain. Now, some people are really positive and really good at this, and some people are not. I want to tell you a story about my uncle, Uncle Stanley. Now, he was a very unique man, Uncle Stanley, but if there was a gift of negativity, he had it. He just had the way of just, have you ever met anyone like this? They just have a way of just wiping you down. You go, I've got a bit of a headache. Oh, well, I've got a brain tumour. They've got one worse than you. my uncle and my auntie, they lived in England, and they decided they didn't like it because it was too cold. So they were going to go and move to New Zealand. So they got on a plane, but my auntie was terribly scared of flying. And Uncle Stanley decided to tell her that the whole plane was being held up in the sky by one little pin. Great for a person with anxiety, eh? You know, I'm like, thanks a lot. Anyway, so she would fly along, and whenever she started to look too calm, he would nudge her and say, one little pin. He was a horrible man. Anyway, so they flew to New Zealand, but they put their things on a boat. So that took quite a long, obviously, you know, many weeks to come across. And they got to New Zealand and they said, oh, we don't like it here. It's too cold. We're going to go back to England. So they flew back to England. Their stuff was still coming by on the plane. So they flew across their things and they came back to England. And they got here and they're like, oh no, we don't like it here either. We're going to go back to New Zealand. So back there. It's a lot of flying for a person who doesn't like to fly. Anyway, so eventually their things caught up with them, but they were so funny. But they just had a way of sucking the joy out of things. And I went to visit them one day, and Uncle Stanley said, come around, I've got new things to show you. I was like, new things? You've got to be kidding. You know, this is an act of God. He does not spend money. He said, oh, come on. He said, come and look at my new couch. Now, I walked into the lounge, had a beautiful new couch, beautiful, but it still had the plastic cover on it because he didn't want me to wreck it. So he said, oh, sit down. So we sat down on the couch, and it had the sun shining on it. It was very hot, kind of sticky, got a 3rd-degree burn sitting on that thing, you know, and we're like, oh, lovely, we're being polite. When I stood up, it was like, removed a couple of layers of skin, you know, and we're like, oh, lovely. But we're being polite, of course, because we're New Zealanders. Oh, no, it's lovely. Ooh. And he goes, oh, no, that's not all. Come and look at my new carpet. So I came in and he got a new carpet. I couldn't believe it. But, of course, they didn't want me to wreck it. So we'd got this plastic matting and he'd cut it out in circles and he'd sort of like placed it like stepping stones across like this. So to walk to the bathroom, you sort of had to walk like this and come back in place. It was, we're like, oh, lovely, well done, you know. And then he says, oh, that's not all. Come and look at me bench top. I've got a new bench top. I thought, wow. We walked into the kitchen and he had this big bench top, all cut out nicely, perfect. It was made of chipboard, particle board, you know, the cheapest type of wood that you can possibly get. I thought, oh no, he's been had, you know. So, he goes, no. He lifted it up. Underneath, beautiful. Brand new Formica bench top. And we all went, ooh, lovely. And then he put it back down. Because Auntie Dorothy wasn't allowed to use it. Because she might wreck it. He just had a way of sucking the life out of everything. But you know, gratitude is the opposite of that. It's saying, even though this might not be that great, I can find something in there that I can be grateful for. I love to say, it's not just pretending, but we've got another little one here. It's a practice, not a perfect. Gratitude is a practice. We have to do it over and over again to get good at it. It's a practice. During my neck minute year, I was dealing with heartbreak and stress, and I was depressed, and a lot was going on. And I rang a friend of mine who was a psychologist, and I started to tell him my story. I was at that stage of grief where you tell everybody everything. Has anyone been there? You know, everybody gets to hear all about it. It's like if you're bleeding and you cut your arm off, you're sort of bleeding over everyone. Sorry, I didn't mean to, sorry. I sat down on a plane once and a young man turned to me and said, how are you? I was like, he instantly regretted asking. I'm like, I'm not well. My husband left me. And the guy's like, how quickly can I get out of the seat? You know, wanted to ding the dinger, honestly. But I was in the middle of that phase and I rang my friend and I said, I'm not well, I feel terrible. And he goes, Julia, I've got a great idea. I was thinking, what? Excellent. This is going to fix my problem. He said, I want you to go down to the shops and I want you to buy a diary and I want you to start a gratitude diary. I was like, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. Don't you want to listen to my problems? Are you not listening? He's like, no. I want you to go and start this gratitude diary. Now, I was brought up in a very conservative background, a semi-cult. And so, if a man tells me what to do, I automatically just do it. But I don't want to. So I'm very passive-aggressive. So I was like, stupid idea. I went down to the shop, bought the smallest diary I could find. Tiny enough. It's not going to solve anything. No, this is going to help. Went back home, stuck it in the bathroom. Anyway, the first day I opened it up, better do it, because the man said to do it. I wrote in there, I'm alive. Next day I came back, opened it up, like 2 pretty beautiful children. Just put that there. Came back. I got a roof over my head. It's a blimmin' expensive one. But it's there. And I began to make a practice of gratitude. I wasn't very good at it. It didn't come naturally to me. But the more I did it, the more I began to realise that while there was so much to be pained about, there was always something to be grateful for. And I started from the front of that and I went all the way through to the back. And I turned it round and I went back from the back to the front again. And I have kept that little diary as a reminder to me that God has been faithful to me through all of my circumstances. So it is a practice. It's not a perfect. Science is with us on this. When it comes to our mental health, science and the Bible aren't fighting. There was a University of California did a big study on gratitude. It wasn't a Christian thing. They got one group and they said, we want you to write a weekly irritant list. Every week you get to write all the things that annoy you. People on this side are like, yes, sounds great. These people, they said, I want you to write a weekly gratitude list. You need to write down the things that are giving you something to be grateful for. After the period ended, the people who had written the gratitude list had an overwhelmingly higher score on their mental well-being and personal resilience. And it wasn't just as a good idea. It worked. It actually worked. When we show gratitude, we get dopamine, we get chemicals in our body that give us a little yes. They are God-given chemicals. They're wonderful things. 2 switches flick on our brain. One of them says, my reward centre gives me that nice feeling, and my stress hormones go down. When we show gratitude, your brain responds. 2 switches, great switches to do. So I'd really encourage you to do that as you go along. Now, Paul talks about this in the Bible. He has this wonderful verse. You've probably all heard this verse. In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God and Christ Jesus concerning you. Now, if you didn't know anything about the Apostle Paul, you could look at that verse and think, oh, that's all right for him. He must have had a pretty sweet life. No, he didn't. He was shipwrecked. He was beaten. He was under house arrest for no good reason. He had a shocker. Some really tough circumstances. And yet he still was able to say, in everything, give thanks. Now you'll notice this doesn't say for everything, give thanks. I am not grateful for some of the things that have happened to me. Some of the things that have happened to me have been other people's choices, and they've had terrible consequences. I don't need to be grateful for that, but I can learn to be grateful in spite of that. Within our circumstances, finding ways in everything to give thanks and finding those ways to show our gratitude. So how do we do this? How do we get a gratitude practice without being a Pollyanna? And there's a couple of ways that we want to do this. We want to look at inside practice. One of the ways of practicing gratitude is like that diary, where we stop and we sit alone and we contemplate. I love the quiet time we had in the service this morning, where we contemplate and we remember and we look on the inside and we thank God for all those things that have been around us and for us. Quiet space is great. But there's another way to show gratitude, and that is an external expression of gratitude. I think it's good sometimes to let it out. So I'm going to get Michael to come and help me out with this. Babe, do you mind coming up and giving me a hand? I like this idea that sometimes we can see what we're grateful for. So we've popped down to the $2 shop. We bought some little bows because I think sometimes it's quite cool to actually see things. And I want to show you some things that I'm really grateful for. I'm really grateful to my mum and dad for paying for 16 years worth of music lessons for me. Every time I see my father, he says, I hope you're still practicing the piano, because he wants to get his money's worth. Something I respect more and more as I get older and older. I'm really grateful for my parents. They didn't have a lot of money, but they prioritised my passion and they paid for that. He also wants to know if I'm looking after my teeth, because I had braces, but that's okay with him. I'm so grateful for their sacrifice, which has allowed me to do this today. I'm also really grateful, I'll pop this up here, I'm really grateful that as a woman in this church I am considered to be of equal status, and I'm allowed to stand up and share my story. I'm allowed to speak to you guys. We are all created in the image of God, and I really appreciate the fact that we've been invited here today. I appreciate the fact that you guys have hosted us and had us here today, so thank you so much for that. Now, I'm going to plant one on you. Is that all right? Ooh. I'm really grateful for you, so much so. I did not expect to be in this situation in so many ways, but I'm just so grateful to have you in my world. I'm so grateful for your support, your love. You put up with me. All the stuff you don't see. I'm a bit of a diva. I'm not really, but he likes to call me a diva. I'm so grateful for your love and support, your prayer for us, your heart for us, and your passion for the work that we do. So, thank you, babe. Oh.
My turn.
One of the things that we are also really grateful for is actually other people's support. Michael and I do this. A lot of the work we do is unpaid, but we are passionate about it. We believe that it needs to be done. And so as part of that, we have set up a trust, and we are actively looking, particularly through New Zealand and Australia, for people who are able to support and sponsor the work that we do. So no pressure to you guys, but if you think of anyone or someone who would be able to sit on board, we've been challenged by our board. We have the wonderful Mary Grant. I don't know if you know Ian and Mary Grant, but they're great supporters of us, and challenged by them to get 100 supporters over the course of a couple of years to be able to gift into the trust at $100 a month or a part thereof, to be able to just get the work that we're doing underway. So if mental health or mental wellness is something that really strikes a chord with you, we would love to be in touch with you or make a way of staying in contact. So please let us know at the end of today. During my neck minute year, often at night I would put my kids to bed at one end of the house, and I would come back to the kitchen, and having held it together for the day, I would just lie, fall, sob onto the kitchen floor. Not because the kitchen was a special place, but it was a long way from their bedroom. And sometimes we hold it together for other people, but when it's just us alone with God, we can let go. And I would just lie there on the floor and scream and cry and sob. And it wasn't nice crying like the movies. It was dirty crying, snot flying, mascara running, strange yodeling noises coming in. And I just thought, God, how can you make something out of this absolute mess? This was not what I had planned and not what I had signed up for. And I remember thinking, if only God could come down and speak to me in that moment. If we could come and take a photograph of us here this morning and lower it down to that girl on the kitchen floor on a fishing line, that would have given me a wonderful moment of hope I would have looked at that photo and said, okay, thank you. That's worth living for. But we don't get fishing lines. We don't get Polaroid photos, but God speaks to us in little ways, often through one another. I was at school one day. I was having a rough day. I was walking around, been crying, had my sunglasses on. The kid came up to me on duty. My married name at the time was Mrs. Vucic. The kid goes, "Hello, Mrs. Vintage." Not a great start, you know. I said, "What?" She goes, "I like your hair, I like your nails, I like your dress." And I said, "Thank you." And it was like God spoke to me in that moment. You know, everything is struggling, but she's pretty cute. She was my practice of gratitude on that day. Look out for those beautiful things. A wise man once said, if you're in the middle of a fire, don't stop. Smart man. It's not a good place for a picnic. Maybe a barbecue, but you know. Keep walking on. Keep stepping on. And keep showing your faith in the God who has shown himself to be faithful. So if I could have a conversation with that girl on the kitchen floor from 7 years on, this is what I'd say. This song is for the girl on the kitchen floor. I'm so grateful that I'm not her anymore. But I never will forget how she cried there on the concrete every night. This song is for the girl who had given up hope, who had watched her dreams and promises go up in smoke as she faced the bitter knowledge there was no more comfort in sight. I want to tell that girl that life will be beautiful again. I want to tell that girl that her days will be full of love again. And I've got miles and miles to go, but in my heart of hearts I know there is so much left to live for. Girl on the kitchen floor. This song is for the girl with a tear-stained face who, in the face of tragedy, hung on to her faith like a lifeline in the tempest. Was all she had the energy to do. This song is for the hearts who were shattered and torn, who are living in the darkest hour just before the dawn. Hold on, better days are coming. I want to tell that girl that life will be beautiful again. I want to tell that girl that her days will be full of love again. And I've got miles and miles to go, but in my heart of hearts I know there is so much left to live for.